Hello, everyone, and welcome to Up Supercast, the only podcast on the internet to have already won the Royal Rumble. I'm Will, and joining me this week, Brandon.
I won at number 2, which is the same as number 1.
Ills.
Give me a hell yeah.
And Seth.
Ooh yeah, bruh.
Noted for saying bruh, the Macho Man Randy Savage. Very good, thank you.
You can tell I'm a wrestling fan.
You're a lifelong fan. Would you,
I really just always wondered why they don't count the people who came in at number 2 and won the Royal Rumble as coming in at number 1. Like, it's like not as impressive for some reason, even though they're both in at the same fucking time.
We're practicing our Jerry Seinfeld stand-up based entirely around wrestling on this podcast.
Yes.
That'd actually be funny. You should do that.
Well, we're going to work
podcast idea, guys.
Here it is. Third one.
What's the deal with wrestling?
Besides, of course, our new podcast we're going to be launching, how are you all doing this week?
Pretty good, besides the fact that there's no Nintendo Direct this week.
Comatose.
Who needs them?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I really
have.
do. In fact, I think I'm having withdrawals. It's been way too long.
Yeah.
Wow. It's been... You ever think about how the Direct has thrown off the way that we consume information, right?
Yes.
Like, there was a time where it was once a year, and you got it through, like, a gaming magazine or, like, reading IGN. It wasn't live streamed.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, it's been more than 100 days since I've got 25 game announcements. I'm doomed. What am I going to do?
I'm ruined because of it. I really am.
Yeah.
Spoiled.
It's all because of the dojo. The Smash Bros. Dojo started us down this path, and we've been ruined ever since.
True. And they can't just take it away from us, or we'll all die.
Once upon a time, we were hunters and gatherers. Now we live in cities.
Now we're soft. Modern man has become weak, thanks to Masahiro Sakurai.
Yeah.
But, you know, we did actually get some tidbits of information, not unlike a Smash Bros. Dojo this week, on a couple of video games. So let's just get to talking about that. Chief among them, Half-Life Alyx. That might be a game that you do not realize is coming out in 2 months. So I figured maybe we should start talking about it again, and they did that with an AMA on Reddit. And so I want to go over some of the details. I would recommend reading the whole of it, because there's a lot of actually pretty interesting answers about, like, the development of Half-Life 2 and a bunch of other things about Valve. But I'm going to focus on new stuff related to the game here. First and foremost, like I said, I think people were doubting a little bit whether or not this game was going to come out on time. Because, I don't know if you remember, they said, see you at the Game Awards when they announced it. And then they weren't at the Game Awards. So people said, that's weird. What happened there, brother? And they said, no, people had played through the game multiple times. We're doing bug fixes, we're doing polishing, but we're hitting that March release date, baby. So it's the one to have made it through this gauntlet of delays. Which is ironic for Half-Life, of all things, to be the one that comes out on time.
Right.
You gotta believe.
Yes. And then they did actually had a couple other interesting ones. One was, hey, it's been a long time since Half-Life, right? How do you sort of try to continue this after such a long break? And they gave an interesting answer that I think is actually useful to know, which is that they have they're going back to old people that worked on the franchise beforehand. That there's some people that still worked at Valve that were there back in '98, and they go to them for a lot of questions. But also, even though there's a new composer who's Mike Moraski, who did Portal 2 and Team Fortress 2 and Left 4 Dead, consulted with Kelly Bailey, who was the original composer for Half-Life. And in the same way, Eric Wolpaw, who is the guy who wrote Portals 1 and 2 and Left 4 Dead's, consulted with the original writer Mike Laidlaw on the script, to sort of help understand the universe better, which is nice to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good that not a bunch of new people fucking around with the franchise, right?
Yeah, because we've noted before, you know, the people that make games are they're important. The behind the scenes things can matter a lot in continuing a franchise like this.
And Valve hasn't really done any games.
Yes, it's been a while.
So we kind of expected that talent to slough off, you know, to not be there when a new game came around.
Yeah. And I think it's also interesting because Laidlaw, I don't know if you remember this, but like last year, around like early April, I think, Laidlaw, the writer for the original games, published what was going to be his Half-Life 3, just online, the script, essentially, for what was going to happen, which I think is what made a lot of people sort of be like, oh, I guess we're never getting it, huh? Like, if the guy who wrote the thing is publishing what would have happened.
Right.
But clearly, I thought Valve might have been pissed at him, but clearly not. They were willing to bring him back in a capacity to help consult on the script, so that's nice at least.
Because nobody fucking reads. Who cares?
That's fair. There's like 10,000 people at a maximum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That game will sell 30 million copies. It won't matter.
And this is interesting, speaking of, sort of that. I think we always forget how big Valve is, right, for having been made the PC storefront, right? They're not a big company. In fact, Half-Life Alyx has the biggest team they've ever had, which, do you want to guess how many people are working on this game?
100 people?
35.
Higher.
Wait,
500.
higher than 35?
Lower. We're going to dial it in.
150.
Pretty close. I'm just going to give it to you. 80 people, which for a AAA release is like nothing, right?
Yeah, it's pretty small.
But it's also the biggest team they've ever had. So that's pretty interesting, and that might be part of the reason that maybe they don't put out as many games in the modern era, is like they just have not upsized to fit, modern development styles.
AAA bloat.
AAA bloat.
You gotta love it.
And then just one other little thing that they talked about was they confirmed for sure Alyx will talk in this video game. She's not going to be a silent protagonist like Gordon Freeman.
Yeah.
And they said that they don't want to sort of ever do that again, hopefully, was what Wolfpaw said, who was the writer. He says, we did the jokes in Portal 2 about you not talking a lot, but you can do that once and it'd be funny, right? Eventually, you just have to start saying lines.
Is this the real reason why they're not doing Half-Life 3? They don't know how to make Gordon talk?
That's honestly maybe a non-small part of it.
Mm.
I mean, that's got to be a weird thing that has shifted under the ground in the meantime.
Yeah. I want to know, the real thing I want to know is, where the fuck is Dog, and why isn't he in the game yet?
We'll
He
see.
better be there.
They gotta hold on to it, there's gotta be some surprises.
Come on, this is AMA. Did nobody ask about Dog?
I don't think anyone asked about Dog.
People suck.
What were they doing? You let us down, Reddit.
Oh, you should have been there, Eels.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you could have asked that question. The hard-hitting question.
I don't deal with the internet. Fuck that.
But that, like I said, not a ton of like new information there, but it is interesting to hear about behind the scenes at Valve, which is a famously secretive company, right? And that's like more insight than we've sort of gotten for a long time from them. Do you guys remember back years ago, the like employee manual got leaked for Valve?
No.
Well, it did, and the thing that Valve's got sort of famous for, or infamous, depending on your perspective, is that they have an open floor plan. So everyone has a desk with wheels, and they just wheel around to wherever they want to work.
Oh, I kind of remember this.
Mm.
Yes, and so basically the whole thought was if there's more than 3 people, they'll just group their desks together and start working on something. But if no one else doesn't want to work on it, they don't have to. But you might think, well, this might be too freeform, was sort of the thing that people sort of settled on, is like, actually, this means that everyone's just sort of doing their own thing and then quitting after a couple weeks, probably, right? Besides keeping Steam running, obviously, which I imagine is a huge endeavor, actually.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting to sort of see, I wonder if there was, at some point, Gabe or whoever came in and was like, all right, we're selling VR headsets, take the wheels off your desks, you're making a VR game. This is what you're doing. This is a normal office now. But it'll be interesting. Like you said, we're only 2 months away, and this is going to be their first release since Portal 2, right? I guess Dota 2 technically came out in 2013, so Dota 2.
Well, who cares about Dota?
Yeah. It's a very different thing than sort of the rest of their games in their catalog. But yeah, so that'll be interesting to see. Hey, we made a fantasy league. I think, who has Alyx in our fantasy league?
Me.
Brandon?
Me.
Yeah, Eels has it.
Oh, Ills. Well, Ills, good luck.
Thanks.
Next up, we got actually a lot of interesting information. I know you're going to scoff at it, Ills, but from the NPD, it is, I don't know if you know this, the end of the decade. And so we now have some final numbers for the end of the decade for how video games did. I have both the top 20 for 2010 to 2019 and 2000 to 2009. Which one do you want to try to guess first?
We can
Whichever
walk our
one
way
you
up.
want.
All right, let's go with the simpler one first.
Right.
This decade, how many franchises do you think are represented in the top 10?
5.
3.
4.
Is 4. Can you guess the 4?
Fuck.
Call of
Call of
Duty.
Duty.
Call of Duty.
Assassin's Creed.
How many spots do you think Call of Duty takes up on this list, by the way?
4.
5.
8.
7. 7 of the top 10 are COD.
7?
Christ.
And 11 and 12 are also COD. So,
I hate
they make up over
everyone.
half the top 20.
God.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, can you guess the other 2? The other 3, I guess?
Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto 5,
Assassin's
yes.
Creed.
No.
What?
Related to Grand Theft Auto.
Your mom.
Red Dead.
She's in no way related. Red Dead Redemption 2. And then this is by revenue, right? So if it was just by copies sold, I think this would be number 1. But it's cheaper.
Minecraft.
Minecraft. It comes in at number 10. But it is $20, which means it sold 3 times the amount that number 11 did, which is another COD.
God.
And then, yeah, so number 1 is Grand Theft Auto, and then just besides that, it's a wall of COD, then Red Dead, then Minecraft. There are 2 exclusives on here. Can you guess what they are? On the top 20.
2 exclusives.
Smash Bros.
Smash Bros. Is a good guess, but no.
Mario Kart.
Mario Kart 8, yes. Number 14. Spoilers, it's another Nintendo. First party.
Mario Kart 8.
Pokemon.
Pokemon.
No,
Not Pokemon?
No. not Pokemon.
Oh, shit.
Pokemon doesn't have enough time.
Zelda?
Mario Odyssey.
Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Down.
Breath of the
Pretty-
Wild sold more than Odyssey?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a pretty successful game.
Oh.
Oh, well, it's sold more in America. This is for sure America, we should note. If you count in
Okay.
Japan and in Europe, I think Odyssey beats it, but
Oh.
Moose isn't
Yeah.
here to correct me, so I can just run wherever I want.
Zelda-
You can just say whatever you want.
That makes sense, though, because Zelda's more popular in America than it is in Japan.
Mhm.
Yes, and it's had the extra year or so.
Because we are men of class.
Now here's a question: can you guess what was number 1 for 2000 to 2009?
Why are you asking all these
It has
questions?
to be
of
a
me?
Call of Duty game, surely.
It's not
Grand
actually.
Theft Auto 5.
Now I'll tell you, this game sold for more than
That game
$60.
didn't come out back then.
Yeah,
Yeah, what?
1 and 2 are both games that sold for more than $60 because they had peripherals. Peripherals won the decade.
Rock Band.
That's number 3, but think you're on the right track.
God.
Guitar Hero. 3.
Guitar Hero 3, Legends of Rock, best-selling
Hey.
game of the decade.
Wow.
Number 2.
Labo.
Labo does not exist, but on a similar vein, actually. It's
Steel
Steel
supposed
Battalion for the
Sup-
Xbox.
a great guess.
Ring Fit Adventure. We did it, boys.
You said the word.
2009.
You said the word.
Wii Fit.
Wii Fit.
Wii Fit was number 2.
Shit.
Yeah, the Nintendo does not like to have for them to call it Wii Fit though in the chart, so it's just Fit
Alright.
What?
Huh?
is number 2.
That's upsetting.
That sounds dumb. I don't like that.
Why?
Yeah.
This is so dumb.
The top 5 are all things that are packaged. By the way, I'll just tell you. Guitar Hero 3 is number 1. Wii Fit's
Decade
number
sure
2.
has changed, huh?
Yeah. 3 is Rock Band, 4 is Wii Play with the Wii Remote, and 5 is Guitar Hero World Tour.
We play.
Fucking
And-
2000s were just the decade of fucking shoving peripherals up your ass.
We had so much plastic lying around the house. And then right before, the looming threat
Apparently.
is Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2 and 1, then Mario Kart, then Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. So there's the things they hadn't quite snuck their way to number 1 yet, but just you wait.
Signs of things to come.
Yeah.
I hate everyone.
The
You,
death of plastic.
you know what
Usher
disappeared
me.
in this decade, though?
Plastic.
Sports games. There's not a single
Yes.
sports game in the top
Fucking
20.
Finally, yes.
Meanwhile, Madden shows up on the 2000 to 2009 chart 5 times. So,
Fucking die.
It's almost like fucking Madden is the same game over and over again. People are sick of it.
yeah. But that's wild, right? Here's a question. Here's a little trick. I bet you could tell me what system has sold the most from 1995 to 2019. Could you give that to me?
Yeah,
DS.
PlayStation 2.
Well, you're not thinking of handhelds.
The
Oh.
DS.
DS.
the DS. Europe puts PlayStation 2 above DS, but DS sold more in America.
Ooh.
Then PlayStation 2, then 360. So that's the top 3. But for dollar sales, which means you're selling how much money you're making.
360 is above the Wii?
360 is above the Wii. The Wii dropped off hardware wise pretty fast. The 360 sold. It should not be overstated how much actually 360 Connect helped 360. It's
Connect?
Connect Adventures is the best selling 360 game.
Yeah,
It's
one
more
of
like
the top selling games of all time because of that.
Yeah. It's like I think it's close to I forget the exact number, but
I thought Connect was a flop. What?
No, that's the thing is like it was dumb to bet on Connect in the way they did with Xbox One, but you see why they did it because Connect was so successful on 360.
No.
Which made the most money of any system. Number 2, PS4. Number 3, Xbox One. So like,
Wow.
This
Wait,
gen.
people try to
where
say
the
that
fuck
the
is
Xbox
Wii?
One.
Well, the Wii, this is by money. This is by dollars, right?
Money.
So it was, so it was
Alright.
250.
I
So
got
you had to sell double. Now here's a question. Speaking of, we also have the numbers for the Q4, right? What do you think is the top 3 that sold in from October to December?
Pokemon.
Okay. Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto, no. That was
Wow.
17.
Holy shit.
Pokemon.
Pokemon, number 2.
Luigi's Mansion.
Number 5, which is actually remarkably good for it.
It is insanely
It is
good.
good.
Uh,
What else came out that I gave a shit about at the end of this?
Well, what have we been talking about?
Nothing.
It's just, it dominates.
Call of fucking Duty.
Call of fucking Duty is number
came out
1.
again. Jesus.
Yeah.
It comes out every year, every single year.
Ills,
In fact,
this is, I know you like
This is Modern
this game.
Warfare this year.
Yep. Modern Warfare 2019 is the
You know
official
I like
way
the
they
game.
list it. Ills number 3, I know you like. It's a game.
It's Kingdom Hearts 3.
It's not.
I think he's
I
being serious
I
that
thought
you
you were
do
trolling
actually
me.
like it.
You do actually like it.
I don't know.
Uh,
man. You gotta tell me. What do I
It's
like?
Star
Tell me
Wars
what I like.
Jedi Fallen Order.
Oh, hey, I
Oh.
do like that game.
Nice.
Yeah. Madden though, still in America, number 4. You can't stop it,
Fucking
unfortunately.
Madden.
But a couple
Gross.
other things that are interesting. Death Stranding at 10, which I think is probably, Death Stranding sales are okay. They're good. They're not crazy. But Need for Speed Heat is at number 12. This game that they did no marketing for, still
Wow.
coasted.
Surprising.
Holy shit.
Is this why they can keep making shitty Need for Speed games?
Apparently.
Just still buy them?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It sold less than the Sword and Shield double pack, which is pretty funny, actually. And then I think this is interesting. Number 14, Outer Wilds. Outer Worlds. I did this again. Outer Worlds, the Obsidian game,
Yeah.
which
It's a good
is
game.
yeah, and was on Game
On
Pass
Game
day
Pass.
1. So I think
Yeah.
people have often said, "Are we worried about Game Pass taking away from physical sales or whatever?"
I think Gears 5 already proved that that's not the case, because didn't Gears do a decent amount?
Yeah, years and yeah, I think that sort of that. I mean, every game like Sea of Thieves did well physical, which is like insane because
Mm-hmm.
So I think Game Pass is actually a separate market than the people that go to buy at stores, which is
Yeah,
interesting
I
to
wasn't
know.
gonna buy that game. I only played
Yeah.
it on Game Pass.
So that's sort of the things to note. But there is a couple of overall takeaways from Matt Piscatella that I think we should mention. Piscatella is a guy who works for the NPD group. He does a lot of the public facing stuff for video games. I'm going to give you a sentence. This is some speak, so I'm going to translate it. He says, "Era of organic total market growth based on expanded digital reach is over."
Huh?
Basically, what he's saying is there was a time where the belief was digital is expanding the amount of people that are buying games. He's saying that time is past. Now digital is eating into physical, which we could have probably guessed from GameStop's numbers going down so quickly, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aren't they looking? I think I saw an article recently that they're looking for a buyer.
Yeah, I mean their holiday spending dropped like 30%, which is a lot in a year. So they're still, I mean, who knows if they'll make it to next gen, which
They
will be
won't. It's over. The dream is dead.
they're probably going to try to, because the one thing you cannot buy digitally right now is consoles. You got to go get a box somewhere.
Yeah.
Even though Amazon might also kill that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so I mean, that's like, okay, yeah, so everyone is now buying digital, sort of like the fact there, right? Like,
Yeah.
physical's not going away, but like the moms are now fine with letting Jimmy download a video game.
Even me.
Yeah,
I've
even Brandon.
been buying. Yeah, and I buy more digital now than anything.
Yeah.
It's because now it's finally to the point where it's almost cheaper a lot of the times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with Game Pass, with like the voucher system, and just random things. Where if I can get it cheaper digital, I'm gonna get it cheaper. Like I'm picking the cheapest option.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So you know, if it's the same price, I'll still probably buy it physical. But you know, I'm always gonna go with the cheaper option, and now it's to that point.
Yeah, it was like even early on. Well, very very early on. Like that was kind of the advantage that physical games still had, whereas like you could get cheaper copies of those games through other stores.
Yeah,
and
whether it
retail.
was used or sometimes they were just on sale.
It's still kind of an advantage. You can always find those used games like in GameStop and stuff. For now.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me, the other thing that like hinted this at to me was that Pokemon did like 40% digital in Japan or whatever it was in the first week, and like Pokemon is the most broad of broad franchises, right? And it skews very kid focused, right?
Mhm.
And when that's doing, you know, a ton digitally, everything else is too.
Well, there's something so great about like having a whole shitload of games on your Switch. You could just switch at any time. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's why I love buying digital, at least on
Yeah.
Switch.
And you don't have to carry your games around and worry about losing your games separately from your console, like either falling out of something or somebody stealing them or whatever, you know. So
Gotta love it.
And then also, this is one of those things. The biggest franchises drive the market more than ever. So basically, in terms of sales, the big boys, you know, sort of as we looked at that chart, the CODs, the Pokemons, the Marios, the Red Deads, are percentage-wise more video game buying percentage-wise than ever. And they drive sales. And even, like you said earlier, Brandon, even on a smaller scale, something like Gears 5 illustrates that. Because, like, Game Pass had its biggest day ever, not when it had like a sale for $1 for 3 months. When Gears 5 came out, that was the biggest spike they had. So yeah, I mean, at some point, video games come back to the actual games when it comes to like having a successful platform, which
Game
it feels
genre,
obvious.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Sometimes people will tell you they don't. So it's
And
good
they're
to see it
stupid.
reflected. Yeah. Brandon, your prediction was right, by the way, officially. Switch one every month for the year.
Hey,
And it
it's
was
the wrong year, but
wow, and it offset like spending being down everywhere else, basically. Which once again we said at the start of 2019, hey, PS4 and Xbox One are gonna dip a little bit, but it should be worth noting. I mean, Switch is gonna probably have the best year that a console's had since 2011, so
Pop some
it did
champagne
well
for the
with no
Switch.
caveats.
Congratulations, Switch.
I'm popping it right now.
And then, and another thing, sort of all these things are preambles to the next gen. Sub adoption grew sharply in 2019, so subscription services are way more being used than ever before. Which, as we've said, I think this was the year for Game Pass where it came into its own in a real, like, it broke through. I had friends in my real life mention getting Game Pass and being like, "This is great."
Stop lying. You don't have real life friends.
Well, if they were real, they probably would say that.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And even PS Now saw spikes, I think, when they added like God of War there day one and a few other things. You know, so clearly there's the potential for Sony to also continue to work on that as well. But here's a big one. Here's an interesting one. The great PC. This is directly from Piscatella. The great PC distribution platform wars of 2019 did not do consumer spending any favors. Priorities of enhancing consumer experience and choice and minimizing confusion were all de-emphasized in 2019, contributing to overall consumer spend on lower overall spend on PC content. So basically, partially due to potentially the Epic Steam stuff, PC spending was actually down over year on year.
The master race is dead. Long live
It's-
consoles.
See, it's been dying since 1995, and it will continue to do so long after. But I think this is interesting because we said a lot. There's obviously been a lot of dumb conversations around the Epic
So
Game
many.
Store, and
Oh, God.
so many.
but I think it's interesting to finally see that, like, oh no, like games like Control and probably a few other Epic exclusives like Borderlands probably did do appreciably worse because of being on Epic. And so I think that being known now, you now present a question for if you are, not an indie necessarily, but if you're like a 2K with Borderlands, of how much is that trade-off worth actually?
They did worse in terms of sales, but how much did they get in terms of revenue? Yeah,
well,
kind of
that's the
comparison.
other question, right? Is like because they're making 20% more off
Yeah.
every sale, so maybe they don't care. Maybe that's purely just on Valve sweating and pulling their collar, right? Because they're the
Right.
ones that would be losing money in that situation. So who knows? I don't. It's a good question, and obviously, I don't think the Epic Store is going away anytime soon. So it'll be wild to see if this was just a thing of getting people on board, because Epic now I think has like 80 million people on its storefront. So that's as much as any console on the market right now, not named PS4. So it'll be wild to see if this continues or not. But there it is. That was a lot of MPD and sales stuff. Moose wasn't here for any of it. We're laughing at him, by the way.
Yeah, he's
Good.
crying right
Yeah.
now.
He
was
doesn't
waiting.
deserve the numbers.
It's true. But there it is. But we did get one other piece of information about an upcoming video game and a game announcement, actually. You might say, wait, what do you... If I say the name Ninja Theory, you might be like, wait a minute, they already have 2 games announced. They got that Bleeding Edge game, they got Hellblade 2. They're not done, brother. They're working on Project Mara, which, as the name could tell you, is pretty early on. There's a very short teaser of a lady in a dark room, and she's like all scared and junk. And then at the very end, a creepy things in the background, and then it goes Project Mara. But they found success in Hellblade 2, they said, with looking at like mental illness and psychosis. They're going to continue that in both Hellblade 2 and Project Mara, because it's going to be a one-person video game in a one-room environment that's going to be about what happens when a person slowly goes deranged. So
psychological horror then.
yeah,
So it's just like Hellblade then.
it's pulling very heavily from the same stuff as Hellblade. Also, Silent Hill The Room, but we don't like to talk about that. But I think it's interesting that, like, they said this is gonna... Who knows if this ever comes out, right? Project doesn't inspire confidence. But I think it's wild that this is... Ninja Theory has become this weird, like, jack of all trades for Microsoft, where they're putting out this weird multiplayer game. They're showing off a game that's like gonna show the power of the Series X, and now they're doing this game that's like one person in one room, small scale. So
I
they're
didn't think they were this big.
yeah, they're deceptively large, and they're also seemingly really efficient. Is sort of the reputation they have. But
Was it them that said they wanted to do a lot of smaller projects instead
Yes.
of constantly do bigger ones?
so this sort of reflects that, right?
Yeah.
And once again, I think it fits well with Microsoft. Sort of like, we need to have a lot of games every month to keep our subscription thing going. This is a good fit, right?
Yeah.
But they did give more detail on Hellblade 2 as well, right? So they gave it. While Hellblade 1 gave us a very personal insight into psychosis, says the director of the game, the sequel builds on that to show how madness and suffering shapes myths, gods, and religions. Our goal is to make an experience comparable to the epic myths and sagas of old and how they can be made. So basically, you know, there's sort of that thing of like, there's a common theory in history that like a lot of myths and legends came from people that would hear voices in their heads, right? And they would be interpreted as messages from God or from different other entities.
Right.
And sort of Hellblade 2 is seemingly going to be all in on that, right? Senua's, you know.
Hellblade 1 was kind of like that.
Yes, but it was very much like the internal struggles of her, right? Like her dealing with her thing, and suddenly it's going to be taking those voices in her head and putting them towards the outside world. Which, I mean, we saw like her leading a chant with a bunch of people behind her in that trailer. So I guess that's probably where we're going. Is like maybe she's going to found a religion? I don't know. It's weird that that's the first game they show for the Series X, but it's cool.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. And they say the team for Hellblade 2 is twice the size of the team for the original. So, once again, I don't know where they're getting all these people from, but they're finding them. But before we move on and we do other things, I do want to briefly do a little bit of a moment in time right now, guys. We're in the last week of January. We probably will, in the month of February, start hearing about PS5 stuff in specific. And so this is our last opportunity before we get a bunch of features, before we see a lot of specifics, to just have our hopes and our desires for these next two consoles. And so not counting like games. I want it to be, like something about the box itself, the controllers, the UI, the OS, whatever you want to do. Just one hope for each, both PlayStation and Xbox, right? And if you guys want to think on this, I can go first to give an example.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I want to think a little bit.
Okay. So like for me, for example, PlayStation, right? I don't think they're going to give up on PSVR. They're clearly invested in the idea of VR. And so my one thing for them, if they're going to keep doing this, is I want the PSVR to be wireless. Kind of like the Oculus Quest is right now. Because I think there's a real problem right now for VR that it's not broken through in the way that they expected, right? I sort of think about, I remember iToy back in the day for PS2.
Yes.
I sort of think of like PSVR right now is like iToy is, right? And I think there's a world where it can be like the Kinect, where it breaks through in this huge, crazy way with like a similar technology. And I think a big problem is your PlayStation, more often than not, is in the middle of your entertainment system, right?
Yeah,
you're well,
It's on the
maybe
floor
not
right now.
It's just you put it in timeout because it angered you. But for like the general audience, I think they put it with their entertainment center. You can't just have a 5 sets of cords dragging from there to where you're sitting to put this headset on, right? Even more so than a PC, because PCs are normally in their own separate little station. And so I think that for this to like hit a wide market of people, there doesn't need to be this like 7-step process if you haven't had a PSVR, plugging in all these different wires and cords. And, I've had people trip while I was playing VR because they didn't see it. So like, I don't want to kill any grandmas while I'm playing with my PSVR 2. So that is my want for when they show off that what I think they're going to show off in VR 2. I want there to be no cords. Let me just put it on my head, baby.
Well, in this harem of grandmas.
Yeah, pay attention to your grandmas, Jesus.
I can't see.
Stop
It takes up
playing
all my
VR.
vision. It
Stop
takes all my
using VR
vision.
when they're in the house.
Grandma should try VR.
Goddamn ingrate.
Wow. And then for Xbox, I'm just gonna go for it. Just get rid of the entire UI. Start from scratch. Just
Yes,
bulldoze it.
please, God.
I think we forget that the Xbox One UI was designed with the idea that you would do most of your navigation with your voice and Kinect. And you can feel it, because a lot of the layout makes no sense. But guess what?
Sucks.
No one has Kinects anymore. So we're kind of screwed. So I would say just fully, from the ground up, new look. I mean, they did that in the 360 days. Remember, they switched from the blades to the avatar, UI.
Yeah.
I think they should do that again.
Like, mid-generation. There's been updates to the Xbox One UI, but it's still not great.
It's got that same foundation as the problem, right? They've
It's
improved
better
it.
than it was at
Yeah.
first. It was worse. It used to be way worse.
Really bad.
Yeah.
But the one thing I do want them to keep is pins. I think every console should have pins, so you can just
Pins
put
are great.
certain games.
I
at the top
really
always.
like pins a lot. And you can make like group pins. You can
Mhm.
make groups and then do pins for that. Like, so I have like all my streaming apps, and like you can name them. So it's like streaming, and there you go. Like you have all these different pins, which are really nice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's stuff that I would like to see, hopefully, carry forward. But besides that, keep literally just the pins. Everything else, restart.
Yeah.
So those are sort of my two hopes for each of them. Anybody got any other ideas?
Sure. You want to go?
Oh, okay.
Huh?
Sure. Yeah. So my hope is like for the PlayStation 5, like the kind of like the copyrighted images for like the controller with the flappy backs. Like I would totally be hyped for that sort of thing for the PlayStation.
The back paddles?
The back panels, yeah. I would totally be hyped for that. Like that seems like a good accessible option, and I would really be glad if they had like the option of customizing buttons so that you can like design the control, like make it a system wide thing where you can design the layout of the buttons to
Rebind.
match. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially because you're a guy as is noted, your hands can hurt you for long play sessions.
Mhm.
Have you tried things with paddles before?
No. Like a lot of
Okay.
a lot of the recent games that I played just are either simple platformers or even just like RPGs where I could just play with one hand. So I never really bothered
Sure.
with like paddle stuff. But I would totally be appreciative of that because like
Mhm.
it's just the index fingers and shit like that, and there's less stress on that would work so well.
Yeah, and also
need to
just
get-
like inherently. Sorry, go ahead.
We need to get Saf one of those one-handed controllers.
Possible.
But also like it's just for everyone. It's nice to like have a button you can access on the right side of the controller besides the without taking your finger off the stick.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
So like because oftentimes the problem in like shooters is like you have to move your finger off the right stick to like jump by pressing the A button or whatever. You can much more easily just tap that paddle and move that way.
Makes sense.
Okay, and so then what you got for Xbox, Safi?
I just want it to do well. That's all I want for the Xbox One Series One X. Like, if it's successful, then that would be great because it will just push for Sony to be more inventive and more creative in how it appeals to gamers as well. Because I think Sony is kind of getting slightly lazier now in terms of
Arrogant Sony's back officially. No, I get it. Yeah, competition's good.
Mm-hmm. And those are my two hopes.
You
Alright.
don't really care about Xbox. You just want them to do better so that Sony does better.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Saf's from Europe. He doesn't need to say he doesn't care about Xbox. We've seen the numbers.
I mean, it's not that I don't care
Uh.
about it. It's just like there still needs to be something that if there's something interesting on it, I'll definitely jump on it. But as of right now, it's just there. I'm really
Sure.
Have you ever owned a Microsoft system?
No.
He had a 360, didn't he?
I mean, I borrowed a 360 quite often.
Oh,
He has a
no.
PC. Oh boy.
That's what you
Yeah.
need.
So in certain ways, yeah, as time goes on, especially. But I think those are both fair desires. Saf, you personally, you just want that. You don't want your hand to hurt as much.
Yeah.
Come on.
They're all
Help 'em out. Come on.
desires.
Come on, Jim. All right. Either you boys got any ideas?
Yeah, for the PS4 controller, I don't want the trackpad there anymore. I think it's fucking useless. I think it was useless this whole gen. I don't even know why it's there.
Well, here's a question. Would you rather take the trackpad or the light on the controller?
Ooh.
Why do I have to choose?
Well, because they were sort of tied together, I think, right? And so I think that they're not going to get I don't know. I think they're going to get rid of one, but not the other, probably.
Yeah, that's what I want. Keep the
Okay.
light.
You want to keep the light? Okay. Because
Yeah,
the light was
the light
like
doesn't
number
bother
2
me.
on my list. I hate that light.
What was the
Yeah, I
benefit
guess
of the light?
I don't care if it's there or not. It was just nice to get a differentiating color for every
Sure.
controller or whatever. But this
The
fairly useless.
touchpad is, you're right, though, in that like there's 3 games that used it as not just the select button.
yeah, it's like why? I'm so
Yeah.
confused. It's very dumb.
I also hope that the PS5 controller lasts longer. That's my other like secret hope.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
But yeah, but because
My PS4 controller dies in like fucking like 3
I think
hours.
both the touchpad and the light drain it, which is why I asked, because both of them I think are the big battery hogs. What do you got for Microsoft though, Ills?
Yeah, honestly, I have nothing. I don't know.
No, Microsoft. Just do
No,
whatever you want, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
You can just hop. You can hop on my UI problems.
I mean, yeah, I did have a problem with the UI when I first got the Xbox One, but whatever.
Microsoft needs its own VR option.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say that, but I don't know. I kind of don't want them to be VR too.
Yeah.
Whatever. Who cares?
All right,
enough.
Brandon.
Not me. I don't care. That's why I don't mention it in my wishes. But I'll start with Sony like everybody else did. And my biggest wish for Sony is, I mentioned it, I think, a couple weeks ago when we were talking about PS5. I think it was our predictions. And one of my things I predicted was that PS5 is going to be backwards compatible with every generation of PlayStation, right? I still hope that's the case. But also, if it's not the case, one of my biggest wishes for the PS5 is an extensive virtual console type situation for the PlayStation. We're 5 generations into PlayStation now, and they have history, going all the way back to PS1. Lots of people, that's nostalgic for them now. And I think
25
that
years.
they really need to capitalize on it. They've always had, PS3 had some PS1 games, and, PS4 has some PS2 games, but they've never been, as meaty as they should. They've always been like, there's a lot of omissions for a lot of games. I think they need a really extensive PS1, PS2, and fucking even PS3 like back catalog that you can download. I think that would be great, and I think it's a big opportunity for them, to cash in on.
Yeah.
So I think that's something they need.
That should be part of their PS Now, right?
That would actually be a really nice way to beef up PS Now. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
And they had like a pretty healthy back catalog of downloadable things on PS3, right? Like, especially later on, they added like Suikoden and a bunch of other PS1 sort of more niche games.
Yeah.
And that's sort of just, I mean, when they announced like the PS4 and PS2 thing at like PSX a couple years ago, I was like, yes, dude. And then it was like 20 games.
Yeah, exactly. It's a missed opportunity. I just want them to capitalize on it on PS5. So
sure. For Xbox.
For Xbox, you know who I am. You know how I be.
Jabroni.
You know the life I live. I love achievements.
Oh my god.
He does.
So
I changed my answer.
I want to see them, have a little bit more forefront. They've always there, which is great. But I just want more stats. Keep the leaderboards, because I love the monthly leaderboards. I think that's a fantastic thing. I would like it if they showed more than the current month and the month prior. I'd love like a year. You show me what's going on the whole year, 6 months, all sorts of stuff. I just want to see stats.
Yeah.
Compare them with my friends. So even more of an emphasis on stuff, achievement things. Just make them easier to find too. I think they're a little hidden away through menus. I want to make like an easy tab right on the fucking front, because right now you got like your main tab, and then you've got like Mixer, and then like the store and groups or whatever. And where's the achievement tab? Like, there used to be that, and I think that needs to be more front and center.
Just put a button on the controller that sends you straight to the achievement.
Hey, that's a good idea. Now you're talking.
And it makes the sound every time you press it.
That'd be awesome.
I feel like just in general.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, I feel like just in general there should be better like play logs for all the consoles.
Yeah. Playtime.
Please.
Achievements do, if you go to them, they actually do log your playtime in your games, and they have leaderboards on those specifically. You can click on them and see you and your friends who have played the game, but they're like, nobody knows. Like, I feel like I'm explaining this to you guys for the first time. They're not.
They're very hidden away.
Achievements suck.
No, they don't.
Suck ass. I hate them so much.
They're fucking awesome. I love them.
So what extra stats are you just looking for then, Brandon? Like,
what?
What extra stats could you possibly be looking for then for?
He wants fireworks to shoot out of his Xbox every time.
Well, playtimes are cool, and if you look at some games, it's cool. Like, it shows, like, some of them show like specific like number of deaths you have in your games, like number of enemies killed, just stuff like that. Keep going on stuff like that. I love to see it.
Because Xbox One added like percentages towards achievements and stuff like that, right?
That too is really good. I like that a lot. So,
and yeah, I feel like it's weird. I feel like there was a big moment last gen where like Geometry Wars was big, a few other things, and it was like, hey man, like your friends' leaderboards being right next to your leaderboards is the future of like asynchronous multiplayer. And I feel like that sort of just dropped off a lot this go around. And I feel like achievements are a good way to make that like a universal system, right?
Yeah, I'm a big way. I really like to play games and compare and see how good my friends are at games and stuff like that. It's really interesting to me, and I like that a lot. So I want them to keep doing it.
All right, so there it is. There are I feel like after what I would say are wild predictions, these were fairly contained once, and I think that's fair. Predict the wild stuff, expect not wild stuff. That's how you live a healthy life. But that is the news for this week, right? That is all the rigmarole, and now it's time, of course, to do what must be done on the list.
The
List!
Follow along in the paste bin below, as every week we add more and more video games to our ever-growing list of good, bad, and ugly titles. This is not a top 100. This is not a top 160, which is how many games are currently on the list. This is just growing as it does. And last week, Brandon added to that growth by adding Super Mario Land,
Do.
which made it to 133 on the list. So not high.
34.
34. Marked it down wrong. 134. It's not high, but there's always got to be something low.
Where it belongs, I'll be honest.
All right, so this is my go round this week. I was gonna add a game. I was trying to think. I had the lowest average add of anyone. I think this will be above that average though. And it's a game that I think is really important. It mattered a lot, I think, in the industry, and that is Batman: Arkham Asylum.
Oh shit!
Hey.
Has everyone played this video game?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. We got that even number to let it really burn, boys. So, Batman Arkham Asylum is a game made by Rocksteady. It is a licensed game, is the implication by having Batman in the title. And I think that it was very important for a lot. Actually, I think it's a very influential game. One, I think it made people start taking licensed games seriously again in terms of making them be good video games, right? I think we have the other sort of claim to fame for that on this list already in GoldenEye, but Batman, I think, and DuckTales, excuse me. But I think I remember people laughing this game off before release because Rocksteady was also not known as a developer. They were new to AAA stuff, but then they came out here and they sort of knocked it out of the park in a big way in the first go around. I don't think we would have Spider-Man, on PS4 if Batman Arkham Asylum didn't happen.
Probably not. That's a good point.
That's probably true.
And it also added, I would say, two pretty big, potentially controversial things that a lot of games picked up. One of which is sort of the combat system of X to attack, Y to counter, in the way that it is in the game. I heard a lot of people from that point onwards refer to it as Arkham Combat in a bunch of different franchises, right?
Uh-huh.
It's sort of, but this game sort of defined it for people. And Detective Vision, which is this button that you press and it sort of lets you immediately see all the interactable things in the environment. And I know that is especially a thing that people can get very annoyed at in games sometimes.
I will admit, I've gotten annoyed at that, especially in like the Tomb Raider games. I'm like, what is this?
But I think even though I think they both wore out their welcome with time, I think they were both effective in this game. Right? Yeah. Because Batman you're incorporating these different aspects of this character, right? Batman he's a detective, he's a fighter, he's a thing in the night that scares people, and I think they do a good job mixing all those together. He's not
just a detective. He's the world's greatest detective.
He is the world's greatest detective. You are correct. But I think they do a good job incorporating all those things. And I think that a non-small reason I actually like the combat a lot is because I think unlike in later games where they got more and more broad, this game is a lot more contained, right? The story is you're Batman, the Joker, you're taking the Joker to the Arkham Asylum, things happen and suddenly the inmates are running the asylum and you're trying to escape and survive the night.
Yeah.
And they keep track of the idea that Batman is a human. He didn't come prepared. He didn't plan for this. So that's why you need to pick up things as you go, right? But like a guy that has a gun can very easily kill you in this game, actually. Very fast, especially early on. And so, there's a lot of actual value to stealthing, right? To sort of going along these rooftops and dropping down and hitting enemies before they can get the drop on you. There's value to that. So you don't always just run into a room and just mash X a bunch and then press Y whenever you see a symbol over someone's head. There's actually a little bit more depth there.
Yeah, you hide in the shadows, you jump from different
vantage points,
gargoyles and stuff.
Yeah,
vantage points, and
there's a lot of capturing enemies and trying to outsmart them.
Yeah.
It's
sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was about to say, it's like there's clearly a lot of love put into it. Like, making sure, you can experience Batman as best as possible. Like, they had, they even had like Mark Hamill and like Kevin Conroy, like two classic
Yeah.
fucking voice actors.
Yeah, I fucking loved that.
Yeah. It's
And
incredible.
yeah, I mean, they make a lot of the game, right? Joker, being the bad guys, obviously it makes sense. One of the complaints with the game that I do agree with is I think a lot of like the build up to the bosses are good, but the bosses themselves I always found sort of like okay, right, not great. And I think the final boss for the Joker just becoming a big roid monster is pretty lame.
Yeah.
It was kind of dumb.
But I do think it's still. I'm always split on it versus Arkham City because I think that this is a much tighter game, right? Like it's a Metroidvania in a more clear way than like Arkham City's more open world sort of exploration. But I think that they do a nice mix of like contained environments, then a couple of open areas to sort of vary it up, and you don't feel overwhelmed by like having to go back once you get a new, piece of equipment and explore previous areas. But I think it's a great
not
game.
as many Riddler things everywhere as there is in Arkham City.
God, and then by like the time they get to Arkham Knight, it's a nightmare with the Riddler stuff.
And shout out to the Scarecrow sections in Arkham Asylum because holy shit, they're fucking really cool.
Yeah,
really
there's a bunch of things in this game that they sort of like kept chasing for a long time, right? In the series, like I mean, Arkham Knight has, like I said, a ton of Riddler trophies, and they go all in on that Scarecrow stuff because I think it was so successful here,
This is the game that like actually made you feel like you were Batman. Like every other game that came before this did not succeed. And
Lots of shitty Batman games before this.
This was like amazing. This is a revelation.
definitely.
I would put this and Arkham City very close to each other wherever they go on the list.
Yeah, I mean when this game came out, just right away it was just like, man, this could be the best superhero game of all time.
Yeah. And that's wild, and I think that ultimately, like you said, we've said a lot. I think it's a great game.
I mean, it's no Superman 64. It's not
what is? But I guess, do we have anything else we want to say before we get to having conversations around where to put it?
It's a creepy looking game too. I'll say that.
Yeah.
They definitely pulled into the dark side of Batman. It's not the, there's obviously, that's how Batman is, it's a darker comic. But of course there's always the lighter side of Batman that they try to advertise in for children.
Yeah.
But this game was not that at all.
No.
There's blood. There's, the villain's Joker he doesn't look friendly. He's
a freaky looking guy.
It's a creepy looking game, which is really, really cool, and it fits in with the aesthetic of Batman.
Now you got me thinking, I want to play like this game, but like the Adam West version of it.
You can get the Adam West costume.
Every time you hit someone, it's just a big
bomb.
pile on the screen.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be good. I do think that they do fan service really well in this game too. Like
sure.
both with like more niche things, like here's like a Tweedledee and Tweedledum reference, and here's Scarface, and then there's more things like you get a bunch of different outfits for Batman that are all themed after the different eras of him.
Yeah, and I think there's like a lot of just text that you can read, backstories on characters. It's a good intro to Batman, and you can learn a lot about the series and the different characters if you don't know already,
And it sounds really hacky, but I think they do a good job of. I mean, I think there's like literally a character in the game called like Voice of Arkham, which is like the asylum itself or something. But I think they actually do a really good job of making the asylum itself be a thing that shifts and changes and feels active that you're exploring, right?
Like it has a dark history to it.
So I guess with all that said, where would I put it on the list? Rough question. I like it a lot. I think it's a really, really good game.
Yeah.
I would put it, I think, right below Donkey Kong Country 2, but above Skyward Sword, personally.
I'm completely okay with this.
Yeah, I was looking in that area. I was already eyeballing that. Like I was gonna put it like, yeah, I feel like I'm really okay with that actually, because I was thinking like under Resident Evil or above it, but so that's really close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That seems reasonable. Like somewhere in the 30s. Well, it's not 30s. Somewhere in the top 30, I should say.
Okay, sure. Because I personally, I used to think like Skyward Sword I think that you can have squibbles around this game too, but I think Skyward Sword, I had more points of annoyances in that game. And I think there's just a little bit too much returning to old areas for me, where I think Arkham Asylum is a much more lean, efficient video game.
Right.
So are we good with that?
Yeah,
No
good.
I'm
problems
pretty
here.
good with that, yeah.
Okay. All right. There it is. Is that my new highest ranked video game?
That is your new highest ranked video game. Yeah, I was just
Oh,
saying.
Yeah.
baby. We did it. That is Batman Arkham Asylum at number 26 on the list. Surrounding it, we have 24 Cuphead, 25 Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest, 26 Batman Arkham Asylum, 27 The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, and 28 Resident Evil. It's the remake, we should clarify. But whatever.
Wait, you wanted me to take away all the qualifiers?
Oh, I think that was Moose, but he's not here. We can dunk on him. That is the podcast for this week. He doesn't listen either. Does anyone have any final phrases in their head that they want to get out after I do my plugs?
Sure.
Okay, got a rare ills one. So before we do that, quick plugs. We are the Jump Up Supercast. If you made it this far, hopefully you enjoyed this podcast. We do it every Monday, and every other Thursday we do the Jump Up Supercast Game Club. The most recent one is Mother 3, where all the guys went, played through it, had a substantial conversation around it.
The longest episode yet.
Longest episode yet. Got pretty high on the list, so worth checking out for sure. And you can make sure not to miss any of this stuff by subscribing to us on your podcast services of choice. And when you do that, hopefully also throw us a 5-star review, because it means a lot, helps with the SEO, all that other stuff. But we don't just do this podcast, actually. We also do a Twitch channel where we stream at least 2 times a week we've been doing so far. And that has been a lot of fun. Brandon's been playing the Game Club games. So right now he's playing Silent Hill 2. And Moose has been journeying through all 12 layers of hell on our list by playing 5 hours of each game in hell and finally doing a full playthrough of Sonic 2006. So join him as he slowly loses his mind every Wednesday. Of course, the place you can sort of as a catch-all for everything that we do is our Twitter at twitter.com/jumpupsupercast, where you can follow when these episodes go live, when we're streaming, everything else. And as well as that, also check out our YouTube channel, where we will upload the podcast if that's where you prefer to listen to them. They're all there as well. But that is, once again, well, thank you all for listening. That's the podcast. And now, Ills, your final phrase.
So I was busy not listening to everybody else and thinking of something to improve the Xbox, and I came up with a fantastic idea, and it's that they should bring back Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, because what the fuck, I need to play that game again. God damn it.